What is going on, everyone? Thanks for entering the Lobby of Hobbies. I'm Jazz, and today we're doing a Kickstarter preview for Chai Tea for Two, designed by Dan and Connie Kazmaier of Steeped Games. This is coming to Kickstarter May 4th. Now, you may have heard of the original design, Chai, but unlike that, this is a two-player experience where it does have a solo mode, but you are competing as rival tea merchants, trying to run your tea plantations the most optimal way possible to mature your tea leaves and set them off to sale on ships to score you points. Now, this is a worker placement game that uses dice as the workers. So if you like worker placement games, you like tight two-player only games, this might be something worth checking out. We're going to take a look at this, see how it plays, and ask the question, can you dig it? And see if this is right or worthy for you to back on Kickstarter. So stay tuned. Now, after setting up a game of Chai Tea for Two, the first thing you want to do is determine your start player and give them this first player token. Next, you need to determine your game length, which is all going to be determined by these ship cards. Throughout the game, players are trying to acquire these ships and fill them with specific teas before those ships can set sail, scoring points at the end of the game. To set your game length, determine how many ships are going to be required to be filled by any one player before the end game is triggered. You can set that number from 3 to 5 ships. Now you're ready to play the game. At the beginning of each round, the first player will take the tea assistant and move that assistant in a clockwise position along these harvest tiles. They can move the assistant anywhere from 1 to 3 spaces landing on a tile. The tile that they land on will determine which tea tokens both players receive. In this situation, both players will each receive 2 green tea tokens along with 2 white tea tokens, adding them to the bottom of their plantation boards. Next, players will determine the number that's indicated on that tile and choose to receive that many unique tea tokens or move the tea already on their plantation tiles forward that many spaces. Or they can even choose to divide that between taking tea tokens and moving placements. So, as players move placements along their board, they're eventually going to get to one of the 3 docks at the top of their plantation board. If they have acquired ships there, they'll be able to place those tea tokens onto ships looking for those specific types of teas. Now, after players have received their resources and done their tea movements, players will flip over that tile and it will go to the opposite side of the player area in the furthest most clockwise position. Play will then continue on to the worker placement phase, where players will each take their dice and roll them. Then determine which worker placement spots they're going to place their workers at, going with the first player and going back and forth until all players have placed all of their workers, resolving the effects on their placement spots. So let's look at some of these placements now. Now, the first worker placement spot that players can go to is the harvest board. Now, at the harvest board, players will take a die of any value, and after placing it there, can gain a tea token of their choosing. Next is the market. Now, at the market, players are trying to acquire various tea plantation cards. Many of these plantation cards allow for tea movement within your plantation, while others are just trying to score you points, some by filling crates with specific types of teas, and others dependent on how many of those cards you've acquired into your plantation. Some of your tea movement cards are only one-time usage, where when used will flip to their face down side. But there are ways to flip them over and use them again. But when placing a die in the market, it must be of equal or greater value to the location and card you are trying to acquire. Now, after placing there, the card is immediately added to your plantation in an open and unoccupied spot. And when placing it there, we'll move any tea tokens of matching type further along on your plantation board, eventually getting you closer to filling ships. Next placement spot is at the palace. At the palace, you can do things like swap cards that are in your plantation, move a card in your plantation to an unoccupied spot, flip over face down cards to their face up side to be able to use them again, and gain the first player token for the next round. You also have the harbor, where players are going to try to acquire ships and place them into their docks. Now, when placing at the harbor, you have to take dice of ascending values. For example, this 3 and 4, I can place onto a ship to try and reserve that ship for the end of the round. But my opponent can outbeat me by placing 2 dice of greater sequential value in that placement. Or any 3 dice will always beat a set of 2 dice. Now, at the end of the round, players will determine where they have dice at and gain those ships into their ports and fill them with any T's that have made it to their docks. The last worker placement spot is the production board. Now at the production board, players are taking any 2, 3, or 4 dice of equal value and placing it there. Now, greater numbers of matching sets will always outbeat lower numbers of matching sets, and higher valued sets will beat lower valued sets. Now, at the end of a round, players will see where their dice are and gain a set number of movement points for the tokens that are in their plantation. And this is how worker placement spots go throughout the round. After all players have placed their dice, players will acquire their ships, move some T tokens, and see if the end game has been triggered. If not, we'll move on to the next round and play will continue until the set number of ships have been filled, and when they do, that round will be the final round and we'd go to end game scoring. And that's how you play a game of Chai T for 2. Now, I did neglect to mention that players will be able to manipulate the pip values of the die plus or minus 1 on their turn for each T token that they spend from their plantation boards. But let's get into asking that question, can you dig it, first looking at the diversity factor and target audience for this game. With all the mechanisms going on in this design, I'd be very reluctant to bring this to the table with new gamers. But for experienced and casual gamers, especially ones that have played worker placement, tableau building, and set collection games, this is one that I'd gladly bring out. I think even for 2 casual players, with the way the rulebook is written, they'd easily be able to walk through the turn structure and get an understanding of how all the mechanisms work together and the puzzle that it brings together, building a strategy. But let's get into that question with the artwork and the theme and ask ourselves how inviting this game is to get to the table. And if you've ever played its big brother Chai, you'll understand that the artwork and production quality of that one is through the roof. And with this prototype deluxe copy of this game, this is no exception to the rule. When I opened the box, I was blown away with just the metal tins and how the tins have the various embossings of the different types of tea leaves, to how differently the tea leaves look in these wooden components. It's incredible. The artwork here, the player board's very nice and thick. The artwork on the cards are vibrant. They really pop on the table. And these dice trays, can we talk about the dice trays? I've never had a game that came with dice trays, but to see the quality of these dice trays, how well they snap together, it's something that's, really elevates what a deluxe, production of a game, is going to feel like. And this definitely, does it for you. I enjoy deluxe quality products, deluxe productions of games, and this one is no exception to the rule. But let's ask ourselves the question, is the game good? Now, I've played and own the original Chai, and that's one that we enjoy. It's a family favorite, but one thing it did lack was in its 2-player gameplay. When I did hear that Chai T for 2 was coming out, my wife and I were both very excited, but we didn't know, what the gameplay was going to be like until we eventually got this prototype copy in. And man, were we blown away. Now, this game is definitely on the heavier side compared to its big brother, but it's one that we have been enjoying, how the mechanisms work together, the strategies that you're trying to build, and it definitely changes from game to game. We haven't even dived into the advanced sides of these plantation boards, but just trying to understand the puzzle on side A has been something that we've been enjoying. And eventually, I'm sure we're going to get into that side B and see how much the game changes just from flipping over to the advanced side. So this is a game that we're very excited to follow with the campaign. definitely will be backing this one, but I would say check this one out. If you're a fan of 2-player games, if you're a fan of, small box games that pack a big punch, definitely check out Chai Tea for Two, May 4th on Kickstarter. Now, if you enjoy the content you're seeing here on the channel, why don't you hit that subscribe button along with that bell icon? That way you can be notified anytime we drop new content. But down in the comments below, let me know what you think of this one. Is this one that's been on your radar? Is this one that you're going to be checking out the campaign, following along to see if this one is right for you? Let me know down below. Let's have a conversation. But I'll check you guys out on the next one. Thanks for stopping by.